All right, let's talk about a story that pretty much turned biology on its head. This is about a discovery that didn't just, add a new branch to the tree of life. It forced us to redraw the entire map. It revealed a hidden third kingdom of life that was right under our noses the whole time.
So think about this for a second. How in the world do you play detective when the crime scene is 3.5 billion years old? We're pretty sure life got its start way back then. But the trail is, well, it's about as cold as it gets. The usual clues, fossils, they're practically non-existent. So how do you possibly trace a family tree back to the very beginning of everything?
So here's the case file. Scientists are mostly on the same page that life on Earth is ancient. We're talking somewhere between 3.5 and 3.7 billion years old. But getting your hands on physical evidence from that early primordial world, it's incredibly difficult. We're talking about a planet of microscopic single cells floating around in a hot, oxygen-free soup. Now, direct evidence, like a fossil, that's usually the gold standard, right? But for microscopic life from billions of years ago, it's really, really tough. Some things in rock that look like ancient cells can actually just be formed by weird geology. So scientists needed a different kind of clue, something more reliable. They needed a molecular fossil, a kind of chemical signature left behind that could only have been made by life. And this brings us to the key piece of evidence that would crack this case wide open. And it wasn't a rock, it wasn't a bone. It was a single, incredibly powerful molecule that a lot of scientists think was there at the very start of it all. Let's talk about RNA. The RNA world hypothesis, it's just this brilliant idea. The theory goes that before DNA and proteins took over the show, there was RNA. I mean, think about it. DNA is fantastic at storing information, but it can't really do anything. And proteins are the workhorses. They do all the work, but they can't store the blueprints. RNA, though, it turns out it could do both. RNA's versatility is what's so amazing. It's like a biological Swiss Army knife. It can store genetic info, just like DNA, and it can catalyze chemical reactions, just like a protein. This ability to be both the blueprint and the builder makes it the prime suspect for the original self-replicating molecule that really kicked off life as we know it. And here's the thing, this wasn't just a wild theory. Back in 1981, a scientist named Thomas Cech made an absolutely groundbreaking discovery. He found RNA molecules that could act like enzymes, literally cutting and splicing themselves. He called them ribozymes. And this was the smoking gun. It proved that RNA could, in fact, do the physical work of a cell. Just a few years after that, in 1986, the Nobel laureate Walter Gilbert gave this whole idea its famous name, the RNA world. He was describing this ancient time, way before DNA and proteins dominated, when life was basically an all-RNA show. So if RNA is this ancient, fundamental molecule, could it hold the key to telling evolutionary time? Could a specific kind of RNA act like a molecular clock, just ticking away through the ages, letting us measure the distance between all living things? Well, the answer turned out to be a resounding yes. The secret was hiding in plain sight, right inside the ribosome. That's the little protein-making factory inside every single cell. You see, ribosomal RNA, or rRNA, is so critical to that process that its basic structure has barely changed over billions of years. Its job is so important that any big mutation would probably be lethal, which basically locks its genetic code in time. And that makes it the perfect ruler to measure these huge stretches of evolutionary history. And this is exactly what a microbiologist named Carl Woese set out to do. The process itself was painstaking, but absolutely genius. First, he picked a molecule found in all known life, the small subunit rRNA. Then he started sequencing it from all sorts of different organisms, and he just counted the differences in their genetic code. The number of differences basically told him the evolutionary distance. Then he fed all that data into a computer to build a brand new tree of life, based purely on genetics. Now, Woese probably thought he was just going to confirm the existing tree of life, maybe clean it up a bit. Back then, everyone organized life into 5 kingdoms. You had animals, plants, fungi, protists, and then this huge bucket for all the bacteria called Monera. But what his data showed? Well, it was something nobody saw coming. This wasn't a cleanup job, it was a revolution. I mean, here's the part that's just wild. The results didn't just rearrange the old branches. They revealed an entire massive third branch of life that had been hiding right there in plain sight. A whole group of organisms that looked like bacteria, but genetically, they were as different from bacteria as we are. So this is it, the new map of life. Those 5 kingdoms were out, replaced by 3 fundamental domains. You have the bacteria, all the microbes we're familiar with. Then there's Eukarya, which includes every plant, animal, fungus, and protist on the planet, including us. And then there's this new group he called Archaea, the ancient ones, many of which just love to live in the most extreme environments you can imagine. And this is where it gets really, truly mind-blowing. The new tree showed that the last universal common ancestor of all life sits on the bacterial branch. But after that, life split, and the branch that led to us, the Eukarya, is actually more closely related to those weirdo Archaea than it is to common bacteria. Let that sink in. Genetically, you have more in common with a microbe living in a volcanic vent than you do with E. coli. But wait, hold on, because the story isn't over, not by a long shot. If evolution was just about slowly branching off, how did our big, complex eukaryotic cells get all their internal parts? Well, the next chapter of this story shows that life isn't just about splitting apart, sometimes it's about coming together. So this raises a huge question, right? We know we're on the same big branch as Archaea, but their cells are simple. No nucleus, no complex organelles. Our cells are packed with them. So where did all that complexity come from? The answer is something called the endosymbiotic hypothesis. It's this wild idea that our complexity didn't really evolve from scratch. No, it came from a merger. Billions of years ago, some ancestral host cell, probably an Archaean, swallowed a bacterium, but it didn't digest it. Instead, that little bacterium became a permanent roommate, an endosymbiont. And over millions and millions of years, it evolved into the mitochondria, the power plant for all of our cells. And then it happened again. A different merger, this time with a photosynthetic cyanobacterium, gave rise to the chloroplasts that power every single plant on Earth. We are, quite literally, the result of ancient corporate mergers. And the proof is still inside our cells today. Mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own separate DNA, and it's circular, just like bacterial DNA. And their ribosomes, they're the same type you find in bacteria, not the kind you find in the rest of our cells. It's like a genetic fingerprint, proving their ancient independent origins. So the big takeaway here is that this totally changes how we should look at evolution. It's not just some relentless competition, survival of the fittest. Our very existence, the existence of all complex life, is proof that survival can also depend on radical cooperation, on partnerships that literally change the course of life itself. This whole discovery just leaves us with a really fascinating thought. We started out looking for a simple family tree, but what we found was this tangled web of life, where branches don't just split apart, they can fuse back together. So if that's life's past, a story of both separation and partnership, what does that mean for its future? What new mergers might be shaping life on Earth right now without us even knowing it?